Welcome to our study tonight. Let's talk about in the news a little bit. Can we do that? All right. Big Brother is watching. Big Brother is watching. Employers scour job seekers' social media for character flaws. And we knew this. A new study reveals what employers hunt for on social media when they are looking at job applicants. And it doesn't have anything to do with job skills. It's all about their character and their social lives, including detecting substance abuse and their attitudes about themselves and others. Traits such as self-absorption and opinionatedness are part of the analysis. A sample of 436 hiring managers evaluated experimentally manipulated hypothetical Facebook candidate profiles. The results demonstrated that content related to each construct had a negative impact on personal organization, fit, and overall candidate evaluation. What did they do? Well, they looked at pictures. They looked at pictures of people that are on Facebook and how much they took pictures of themselves, usually eliminated them from jobs, and also if they took pictures of themselves drinking, eliminated them from jobs. And even though the managers may be drinkers themselves, they didn't want to hire somebody who may have had a potential problem. So if all they saw is somebody on Facebook that every time they take a picture of them, it's about themselves, or it's because they always have a drink in their hand, they didn't get hired 98% of the time. And so Facebook is really pretty revealing, more than just having a good time. Let me give you a little bit more of what's going on. This is one that came out today. The UN blacklists companies with ties to Israeli settlements. Now we know the UN is prejudiced against Israel, but they did something today that's pretty horrific. The Human Rights Council published a blacklist on Wednesday, they did it actually, of 112 companies connected to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the list included 94 based in Israel and 18 in 6 other countries. The list, which has been in the works for nearly 3 years, could result in companies appearing on it to become targets for boycotts or divestment. Among some recognizable U.S. companies are TripAdvisor, Airbnb, Expedia, General Mills, and Motorola Solutions. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing them to try to get them to put pressure on these companies that are dealing with Israel, and especially Israeli authorities in the West Bank, or Israeli concerns in the West Bank. The problem is nothing in international law prohibits Israel or other companies from doing business in the West Bank. Nothing, regardless of how one views the status of the territory. Many European countries have explicitly stated there is no legal obstacle to do such business. Indeed, some of the very companies on their list do business in occupied territories such as Western Sahara. Thus, the list is saying you can be engaged in massive operations to support occupation in other areas, and we won't blacklist that. But if you do business in Israel and involves the Jews, we will. So obviously it's very, very prejudiced. And this one is kind of shocking. I won't read it all. It's pretty lengthy. It says, France quietly reintroducing the crime of blasphemy. France has just come out of the 5th anniversary of the massacre of its satirical magazine, Charlie Hebdo. You remember that. They published a cartoon against Islam and they were firebombed. It was plunged into a similar case. On January 18th, Mila O, a 16-year-old French girl, made insulting comments about Islam during a Instagram live stream. During her live stream, a Muslim boy asked her out in the comments, but she turned him down because she is gay. Now, this is the enemy fighting himself, but just listen to this. He responded by accusing her of racism and calling her a dirty lesbian. In an angry follow-up video streamed immediately after she was insulted, Mila responded by saying that she hates religion. She continued saying, among other things, "Are you familiar with freedom of expression? I didn't hesitate to say what I thought. I hate religion. The Quran is a religion of hatred," she said. "There is only hatred in it. That's what I think. It's what I say what I think. Islam is," and she says an expletive, "I'm not a racist at all. One cannot simply be racist against the religion. I say what I want. I say what I think. Your religion is," again, an expletive. So what she might be considered a bit, what she said might be considered a bit raw, but does she have the right to say it? This is the question. After all, Jews are called the descendants of pigs and apes without the speech police having a stroke. So I won't read you all of it. Here's what happened. So in France, she immediately got lambasted by the government, and they told her that she was citing a riot. She was thrown out of her high school, she's getting death threats and she can't go to her high school. Now, again, I don't agree with her lesbian stance, but everybody has the freedom of speech in a democratic society. And France is a democracy, believe it or not. It's socialistic democracy, but it is. But basically, she has to vacate her home. She's 16 years old. She can't go back to her high school. She can't go with any of her friends because France and its government has stood up for the Islamics. And so we're watching this Muslim horde try to go through country after country, and they're putting such pressure on it that they are thwarting anybody's efforts to say whatever they feel. You know, if she said something about Jesus, or if she said something against Christianity, nobody would say a thing to her. But they're bowing to this pressure, and France is really has a Muslim infiltration that's unbelievable and unheard of. So it's kind of sad when you see things that happen like that. Similar things I'll read to you about Billy Graham in England with a Muslim population. Let me tell you about this guy, Bernie Sanders. You may have not been there Wednesday night, but in my Wednesday night study on Isaiah, I took apart socialism. It was part of Isaiah, but he was talking about unfairness. He was talking about government. And I took apart Bernie's whole platform. I showed what about socialism and capitalism. So if you want to listen to that on YouTube later on, you may find it interesting in the beginning of that study. Bernie Sanders obviously is a socialist, and he prides himself. I'm going away from this article right now. He prides himself on getting the small monies. Like he gets $10 from here, $5 from there, and of course he's talking about giving away everything because he's a socialist. And believe it or not, he will tax everyone. He already has a proposal to put a 2% tax on payroll, and so he will continue. You have to tax it. He's going to spend billions and billions in 10 years on his free programs, and you've got to take it, number one, for the rich first, but then it's not going to stop there. It's going to continue to go down. He will not be able to generate the funds, the revenues to be able to pay for his giveaway programs. So when you think about the supporters, everybody tells you they're very young, and they are. But there's another demographic that I found the other night, and I put it up. The ones who support him, 30%, the overall amount of people that support him, 30% of them are unemployed. 30%, that's where he's getting his $5 from. They're thinking, I can give you $5, but you're going to give me thousands back with all these social programs. 30% are unemployed. And so that's his claim to fame. He is big among the unemployed because they want free things. And so this is another thing that just came out. I was first in the nation. It says, pro-Israel Democrats stop Bernie. This is an interesting article. Iowa's First in the Nation caucus ended in chaos for Democratic Party that was looking for clarity as the presidential race began in earnest. It was also the beginning of what many proved to be a crucial element of the contest of the efforts of pro-Israel Democrats to ensure that their party nominates anyone but Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. They're totally against him. With a major ad by attacking Sanders by name and calling attention to his recent heart attack, as well as questioning his electability, a super PAC backed by a centrist pro-Israel politician action group fired a shot in what is becoming a nasty civil war between Jewish Democrats. The ad was the work of a Democratic Majority for Israel, a well-funded group founded a year ago to counter the trend in which Democrats are increasingly perceiving as drifting away from support of the Jewish state. A half-century ago, Democrats seemed like the solidly pro-Israel party with the GOP divided. But in recent decades, Republicans have become the lockstep pro-Israel party, with the Democrats split between centrists who remain broadly supportive and a growing left-wing activist wing that is hostile to its policies, even to the idea of the existence of the Jewish state. So let me say something publicly. It's going to go out, and I've been telling you this, and I'm probably the only one that you've heard it from. I've said over, and I'll say it again, you cannot be a Christian and a Democrat at the same time. I've said that. Now, I believe you can't be a Jew who wants to support Israel and a Democrat at the same time. And I'm going to go a little step further, because Bernie this week stood up on national television in an interview, and he was asked if you have to be pro-abortion to be a Democrat, and he said all Democrats have to be pro-abortion. So now, if you believe in the sanctity of life, you cannot be a Democrat. The Democrats, here's the deal. Democrats, in my opinion, can't be Christian. You can't be pro-Israel, and you can't be pro-choice. or you can't be pro-life. So that's limiting all of the field of Democrats. They are going so far out to the left that they are going to the spot of alienating even their own Democrats that are in their centrist party. Matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why Buttigieg is doing so well, because he is more of a centrist, even though he has some weird opinions. He's more of a centrist, so that's why he's gaining, because there's no choice for the Democratic Party. Listen, if I was a Democrat today, I would say, what are we doing? There is nobody that's going to take this race. No one. Trump is going to go in for another 4 years. Bloomberg can think he's going to spend all of his money and get back in it, but Bloomberg can't speak, and basically he can't lead. And if he goes to debates with Donald Trump, that's like meeting a grinder. It's not going to fare well. So I really think the Democrats are helping elect Donald Trump. I think they're our best avenue of electing Donald Trump. All right, let me give you this one. It's kind of interesting, kind of long, a little bit of detail, but most people don't get it, but I want to give this to you. The Sanhedrin, which is 120 spiritual ruling people they're Hasidic and regular Jews in Israel. They rule in a spiritual way. It's the same Sanhedrin that was formulated in Christ's time. They get authorization to use their trees for the third temple. And that may not sound like a lot to us, but it's pretty amazing. 5 years ago, the Sanhedrin began planting in preparation for the needs of the third temple. Thousands of trees, and today is the first day, this week was the first day, Monday actually, that the fruit of their labor can be used. What does that mean? Well, most people envision the temple as a form of an open-air barbecue, with animals being slaughtered and burned on the altar. Though it is true that animal sacrifices play a central role in the temple service, the plant world also played a significant role. The wine libation came from vines cultivated using a specific method. Grain offerings were necessary elements in the daily temple service. Large amounts of the highest quality olive oil were used in the menorah. Bikurim, which is Hebrew for first fruits, brought from the 7 species special to the land of Israel, played a seasonal role in the temple, as did 4 species of trees that are used every Sukkot. Even the wood burned on the altar was harvested especially for temple use and individually checked for worms. Ever present on the altar were 3 piles of wood. The first for burning the animal sacrifices, the second for making coals to burn the incense, and the third for a perpetual altar fire commanded by the Bible. And the fire upon the altar shall be burning in it. It shall not be put out, and the Kohen, which are the priests, shall burn wood on it every morning. That's Leviticus. That's a command from Leviticus chapter 6. The wood used in these arrangements was considered sacrifices. In the temple, the wood was provided for an annual offering. This is Nehemiah 10:35. And we cast lots, the priests and the people, for the wood offering to be brought into the house of our God. The Mishnah, which is the Talmud, states that the Passover lamb was roasted on a stick from a pomegranate tree. So what does that mean? That means they can't have a lamb sacrifice unless they have pomegranate trees. So pomegranate trees are not necessarily very plentiful in Israel, especially for sacrifices every day over and over again when the temple's built. So they started planting pomegranate trees. But the Bible says that you can't use those trees until after the 3rd year. After they plant them I'm just paraphrasing what this is saying. So we've just hit the 3rd year. So now they can use those trees for animal sacrifice. Now what does that mean? Well, the temple is going to be rebuilt. We know that from Revelation. We know that the Antichrist is going to do the abomination of desecration 3.5 years into tribulation within a rebuilt temple. It's going to be rebuilt. We know that there's a cornerstone. They try to lay it all on Tish B'Av. We know that there's a solid gold menorah 6 feet high that's right now in the streets of Jerusalem. I see it every time I go there. It's going to be used in the temple. They have all the pots and all the works for it. The Temple Mount Faithful have all the priestly garments for it. They have all the necessary instruments. They have a table of showbread. We have a red heifer that's right now. It can't be purified unless there's a red heifer. And now they have actually kosher trees. They call them circumcised trees because they're able to be used in temple sacrifices. So there's not a whole lot of things left for that temple to be up and running. So I just want to let you know that is pretty big news. And of course, nobody's going to talk about it because they don't understand it. But it's very big news, especially in Israel. And here's another one. Peace plan protesters in New York echo Hamas view of Israel. So this week, there were thousands of people in New York in Central Park and all over Fifth Avenue that were protesting the fact of Israel being able to have any type of settlements, being able to have Israel have any type of Jerusalem as their capital, and it was backed by Hamas. The interesting thing to me was they said this. They were chanting in New York, from the river to the sea. They repeatedly chanted it, and they said Palestine will be free. Well, most people would pass by that and not realize why they were doing that. The protests went off saying that they were actually just Islamic Arabs that wanted to get Israel to concede the lands that they're in. That's not true. Because as soon as I read that, from the river to the sea, the official patch of the PLO, which you'll hear about tonight, the PLO started in 1964, Psalm 64. The official patch in Arabic says, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And so this was backed by Hamas. And no newspaper picked that up, no organization picked that up, no media picked it up. This was a Hamas-run rally in New York City, taking advantage. Hamas is a terrorist group. They are bound and determined to push Israel into the sea. They were using our freedom, and the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, to speak their mantra of wanting to wipe Israel out. And nobody said a single thing about it. So if you know a little bit about the PLO, and you will tonight about the PLO, you'll know that this was a PLO type of meeting, even though it's not called the PMO anymore, PLO, it's now morphed into Hamas. Yet no speaker at the protest uttered any word or any sentence about Hamas, yet it was definitely a Hamas-run rally. So we're watching it happen. They're getting closer and closer. Let me give you this one. We talk about war. The Bible says, Jesus said in Matthew 24, there'll be wars and rumors of wars. And obviously he's talking about the last days. And we also see in Revelation that some of the plagues look like it's almost nuclear. We see fire and brimstone. We see melting. We see boils. We see things that are indicative of a nuclear fallout, a nuclear race. Now, the misnomer is this. We think that if somebody shoots a nuclear rocket off, everybody's going to die in the world. That's not true. As a matter of fact, there's small nuclear weapons that they can shoot that could take out just a city block. Let me give you an example. 2014 went unnoticed by us, but in 2014 a nuclear cloud was detected over North Korea. It was on the border between North Korea and South Korea. It was a nuclear cloud. Our satellites picked it up. The DPRK, which is North Korea, immediately said they had an explosion at one of their hydroelectric dams. Said nothing about a nuclear explosion. Condoleezza Rice at that time got on TV and said that that's indeed what it was, and they believed North Korea, right on the border between North Korea and South Korea. And pretty much everybody went their own way. We found out later, because English scientists going to inspect the site were taken 100 miles away from where the blast was. We found out that it was a nuclear cloud, and probably the reason why the United States immediately accepted it is because we put a SEAL team in there to blow it up. And so it was threatening the border between North Korea and South Korea. And lo and behold, the people from England that went over found the missile site that was there, and radiation, realizing that it was nuclear. So there have been nuclear explosions that maybe we don't know about. This one ties in with that. Will deploying low-grade nuclear weapons make nuclear war more likely? The 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, passed in December by a vote of 477 to 36, allows deployment of the low-yield tactical nuclear warhead. So what we did is we took the Trident submarines that we have, and we armed them with low-yielding nuclear warheads. So right now, off the coast of Seattle in Kings Bay, and in Kings Bay, Georgia, we have Trident submarines that have small amounts of nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads on their missiles. Now the thing is that they're tactical, so they can reach Russia, they can reach anywhere in the world. But the problem is this: they've been arguing that if the U.S. were to launch a missile with a low-yield warhead at Russia, Russia would not be able to distinguish it from one carrying a high-yield warhead, and would likely launch a retaliatory attack with high-yield warheads, leading to an unintended large-scale nuclear war. Now, why do I tell you that? Because there was a moratorium on building up nuclear weapons through several different regimes in Russia and administrations. We were scaling back, as a matter of fact. There was a nuclear arms deal that we scaled back. That is off the table right now. And so for the first time ever, we are escalating. And so is Russia. And so is China. and so is India, and so is Pakistan. They're all nuclear, and they're escalating, which kind of gives me the idea that what Jesus said was absolutely right. Wars and rumors of wars. We're watching people build up, and sooner or later something's going to happen. It's not like it was in the 70s and the 80s and even in the 90s when we descaled all the way back. Every country descaled. Now they're growing again. And so we're watching these signs just come about one after another. Speaking of signs, the Bible says you will be hated for my name's sake. Evangelist Franklin Graham has said in a media interview that he's surprised to see all the confirmed venues in the United Kingdom pulling out due to his views on homosexuality. I told you this last week. And now he says, all I wanted to do was come and tell people about Jesus Christ. But every venue, 1,800 churches were involved in this, 1,800 churches, about 12 different venues he was going to. They were all paid for. They paid it and they were all reserved. And now he's saying, we're going to look for other places. I heard a report today from someone that knows Franklin and knows me, and I heard a report that said that they're actually looking to do it open air. Nobody's going to do it to them. They're going to do it open air. And let me tell you something, you may see a bigger move of God in England than you've ever seen. And so God cannot be stopped. Let me give you this one. That's right there. Let me give you this one. Anybody know who this guy is? Very good. He launched a passionate speech about animal rights, vegetarianism, and speciesism. This is from the Oscars. While the director of an Obama documentary quoted Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. The elite, the mega rich, and the powerful called for the uprising of the oppressed working class. I don't even know how that makes sense. If you're elite and you're upper class and you want the working class to protest, other taglines in this included this. Hair Love creator Matthew Cherry, I have no idea what that means, advocated for Crown Act, a California law that prohibits discrimination based on hairstyle. American Factory co-director Julia Reichert, who is fighting terminal cancer, quoted from the Communist Manifesto. Janelle Monáe opened the show by declaring herself a proud black queer artist telling stories. Sigourney Weaver declared all women are superheroes when she presented an award. Yes, Hollywood has been woke for many years now. How many of you have heard that word woke? How many do not know what that word means? It's okay. Woke is this. Woke is an injustice in society. It's an actual word. It's any injustice in society, and actually it's especially racism. So Hollywood's been woke for years, fashioning itself to the prophetic voice of conscience. And the truth be told, many in Hollywood are passionate about their causes, from animal rights to climate change, and for same-sex marriage to immigration. They truly believe conservative religion is damaging people's lives. That's us. They truly believe we are destroying the planet. To quote Joaquin Phoenix at length, here's what it says. I think whether we're talking about gender inequality or racism or queer rights or indigenous rights or animal rights, we're talking about the fight against injustice. We're talking about the fight against the belief that one people, one race, one gender, one species has the right to dominate, control, use, and exploit another with impunity. I don't know why he's saying that, because I don't know what species he's talking about. Not only so, but he said we go into the natural world and we plunder it of its resources. We feel entitled to artificially inseminate a cow and then steal her baby, even though her cries of anguish are unmistakable. To which I would say, pity that poor baby cow. What about all those little human beings that are being ripped up from the womb? It's hypocrisy, and it's in Hollywood. So there's two questions. It doesn't answer the two fundamental questions. First, why is this segment of the population so outspoken about social and political issues? And why do they claim to care so much? Second, why have they taken up positions on the extreme left with issue after issue? Perhaps the answer to the first question is this. Everyone in Hollywood is involved with producing movies. Most movies carry a message. And by the way, somebody who writes a movie, screenwriters, somebody who produces it, and actors that act in it. Actors turn down movies because it doesn't fit their message. They're trying to be messengers to society. And Joaquin Phoenix just got an Oscar for, anybody know? The Joker. It is the worst movie on the planet. Listen, you don't want to see any part of it. It is disturbing. It's about somebody who's mentally ill, who has a gun and kills everybody, including his mother. It is the most disturbing movie. No entertainment value at all. But it's saying something. What it's saying is people miss it. What it's saying something, I want you to be disturbed about this movie. Why? Anybody have any idea? Think of what I just told you. Why would they want you to go away disturbed? Guns and mentally ill. Mentally ill with guns, which what they're saying is, if you have a gun and you kill someone, you're either mentally ill or you're just allowed to society. By the way, he was heralded at the end of this movie. At the end of the movie, in the movie, He was the star, he was the superhero. And so it's a really mixed bag, but it's something that's really kind of weird when you think about it. So most movies carry a message. So the people involved see themselves as messengers. Actors play certain roles, and screenwriters produce the scripts, and directors oversee the process. They feel they are playing a prophetic role in society. They're telling stories they think need to be told. They're making social statements. Consequently, they themselves have something to say. But how then did their message become so slanted? Why a quotation from Karl Marx? Why a concern about inseminating a cow? It's the result of taking up causes from a me-centered perspective. To say human-centered doesn't seem to cut it well. In other words, rather than seeing things from God's perspective, they see things from an earthly, carnal perspective. So rather than seeing the meaning of marriage as God intended it for human flourishing and the well-being of society, they see the injustice of two women not being allowed to marry. It also means they see animals as equal to humans, since humans are not uniquely created in the image of God, they feel. They even see trees as equal to humans, and even better than humans, since trees are noble creatures that have never hurt anyone. As to how these views became so dominant in Hollywood, this would seem to reflect a process similar to that in our universities, which I told you about. Our universities have produced a massive amount of liberal professors. 95% of them are liberal professors. They've been that way since the 1960s, since the Cultural Revolution. They've been teaching kids since the 1960s about their leftist views and about God not being impersonal if he's even up there. So now those kids from the 60s are now our leaders and the people that are in Hollywood and producing movies. And so we're watching it trickle down. By the way, it was Karl Marx himself who said, you teach the young early enough, and by the time they're old, they'll change society. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's why we have all these mouths in Hollywood. My opinion, because I don't give it often, is this. They pay you $22 million if you're a star for a movie. I'm going to put it in the vernacular. Shut up and make the movie. We don't want to hear anything else you have to say. You're acting. You're not. We don't care. You're false to begin with, because everything you show us isn't you, and so we don't want to hear anything you have to say. Does that sound fair? Good. They can silence us. We can silence them. Here you go. Parents fight back, and this is truly disturbing. Parents fight back against kids' trans surgeries without their knowledge. Now, you may think this is horrendous, and it is, but I would think that we have not gotten to this far, but we have. It's an absolute nightmare for a mother to live through. Elaine Davidson's voice spoke haltingly. It was social media, she explained, where she first saw the photo of her daughter's chest, bloody bandages covering the places where her breasts used to be and were cut off. Elaine's daughter was 17. She had a double mastectomy and a hysterectomy without her parents ever knowing it, and without a single psychologist signing off. In Oregon, Elaine says kids as young as 14 can make the same decision without ever calling home. These surgeries are done in an outpatient basis, which only required a few visits to a therapist with a master's in social work. No psychologist, no psychiatrist, no years of therapy like many people think. And these young innocent bodies, she struggles to explain, are permanently marred. This is very, very mutilating surgery. I had previously raised concern to a therapist that I believe she's on the autism spectrum, and I still do. But they dismissed it and instead just really pushed her toward medical transition. And I found out about the surgeries after the fact, when her daughter decided to have a phalloplasty. And that's, by the way, if you don't know what that is, it's changing from a female genitalia to male. Elaine started to cry. I flew to Portland twice. I begged everyone I could. I begged her. I couldn't stop it. All I could do was be there for her. She watched helplessly as her daughter changed the course of her life forever. And she's determined that no parent should ever have that surgery, to suffer that agony without saying a word again. She joined a coalition, a movement of parents from all across the political spectrum. Why are we letting our children make life-altering, permanent, irreversible decisions about their bodies and about their health when we have enough sense not to let them get tattoos until they're 18 or drink until they're 21? And she was heralding a law that was coming through one of the states that was going to stop this. Well, I just picked this up today, as a matter of fact. This is the law, and I'll just update you on it. It says conservative in name only. And this is shocking, and it's going to shock you also. Lawmakers give in to the trans agenda. I've been all the way down the path, and I've come back to warn others, Walt said. Not everyone gets a second chance at life. Listen to this, it's eye-opening. What Walt did, he only wanted to do one thing, free others. He traced back the painful parts of his life, the surgeries, the hurt, the anger, the abuse, and started writing. In a world where activists are fighting to castrate and mutilate children, he realized that staying quiet was no longer an option. He went public, pleading with society to understand the harm in gender change. I'm quoting, "Not because I was a psychiatrist, a college professor, or some extraordinarily brilliant guy, he admits, but because I lived through it. His story is agonizing. He knows what it looks like he knows what it's like to look in the mirror with the horror and regret so many victims feel now. Walt lived 8 years as a woman, trying my best, he says, to make it work. But after the surgery, I still had gender dysphoria. Even worse, I was suicidal. His fresh start came crumbling down. Emotionally, I was a mess, but with grit and determination and the love and support of several family members and counselors, I pursued healing on a psychological level. He went back to the emotional trauma of his childhood and found peace. Finally, he made a decision. He would go through the long and harrowing process of detransitioning. You don't hear this at all, do you? Walt started connecting with other victims, many other victims. Several people transitioned in their teens, but when they hit their 20s, their feelings of gender dysphoria changed. They grew out of it, but only after having made irreversible changes to their bodies and their alternate identity. You will hear the media say, regret is rare. Walt warns, but they're not reading my inbox, which is full of messages from transgender individuals who want their life and their body back. The idea that anyone would want to lock hurting kids into a lifetime of misery is absolutely unconscionable to him. Walt urged South Dakota legislators to support a bill that would protect children from the trans life at least until they're 16. Don't you think that's kind of reasonable? How many think that? What the bill says is after you're 16, okay, but you can do what you want, but at least until you're 16. Children, he insisted, don't have the capacity or mental maturity to consent to decisions with lifelong consequences. I've told you that. The prefrontal cortex is not developed till they're 21. And yet they're so easily to manipulate that they have become soft targets. Listen to this, it's shocking. In today's raging political and cultural fight over what it means to be a human. Surely, he argued, no one would object to waiting until a person has the capacity to understand the risks and consequences and give informed consent. This is particularly important given what we know about the changing nature of gender dysphoria in children. It changes back and forth. When children experience sex confusion, it usually does not last. No child should be locked into a trans life, he argued in the state capital's newspaper. That is not medical care, it's child abuse. And yet, amazingly, it's child abuse the South Dakota Senate refuses to stop. Monday, against all research, testimony, and common sense, 5 legislatures in the committee voted to kill a measure that would give teenagers and their families more time to weigh a decision that could destroy them forever. It's a pause button, Representative Frank Deutsch, Republican, the bill's sponsor, called it. Nobody's saying that kids can't pursue these treatments later on, but surely we can all agree that children who can't even drive shouldn't be steering themselves into permanent medical procedures. Governor Kristi Noem, a Republican, a mother of 3, apparently doesn't see the harm in it. After the measure passed the House, leaders said the governor started working behind the scenes to oppose it. This is a Republican, by the way. If the reports are true, and our conversations with legislators suggest they are, her efforts paid off. Despite having the committee majority, Republicans voted 5-2, Republicans, to sink the only hope South Dakota's parents had. Unfortunately, Governor Noem could not muster the courage to stand with other moms in protecting kids from an agenda that will scar them for life. Instead, she's leaving parents right where they started, haunted and hunted by a movement they can't stop. So politics stink. They stink. All they're looking for are votes and constituents, and they're not caring about anybody else. And that's exactly what's happening here. Let me give you a little bit more as we go on. I'm going to just go through some of these and eliminate some. Let me give you this one. Coronavirus. You have got to start listening to this. I know you are. People who are listening to me have got to start paying attention. Dangerous Asian coronavirus outbreak. Concern is growing in China about thousands of cases of new coronavirus. So I updated. This is the first one I gave you, and this was last week. Last Thursday I said 28,000 were infected, up 7,000, and it was confirmed 560 dead. That was last Thursday. I upgraded it yesterday for the people that were there, and I told them that it was upgraded to, let me just get it for you what I said to them yesterday, to 1,115 dead. Today is 1,300 dead. Yesterday I told them that there was 48,000 that were infected. Today, overnight, 15,000 more have been infected. That infection rate is up to 60,000 that they're reporting. And so 60,000, 170 cases confirmed on a cruise ship, 2,000 more stranded on another cruise ship, turned away from several ports. 420 people in the U.S. have been investigated for coronavirus. 15 so far have died. The tipping point is still ahead, says German health minister. It will get worse before it gets better. And now they've renamed it, by the way. The coronavirus is now called COVID-19. CO for corona, VI for virus, D for disease, 19 for 2019. So let me just give you a rundown of another article I found that I thought was extremely interesting, and I put my own little footnotes on it. This article talks about the countries. I almost put the microphone in my mouth. This article talks about the countries. A deadly new coronavirus has spread to 24 countries from China, and here's my little notes. You can see them. I wrote them here with some of my other research. China is the 20th persecutor of Christians, major persecutor of Christians in the world. And so there's a plague going on in China. Hasn't stopped the country of 363 people from preparing to build a place called Place X. This is in Iceland. Russia has shut its borders down. Iceland and Antarctica have special places in case anybody lands there. And we see over and over again, one country after another is succumbing to this virus. I want to read you something. I think I have them all. Well, India. Well, I'll tell you in a moment. So the country that's suffering most is China. And China is 95% of the deaths to 97% are in China proper. Again, China is a major persecutor of Christians. So I found this one today, and it's kind of interesting. This one says how coronavirus, and by the way, there's a coronavirus around the planet. The red is where there are active cases. But notice that Africa doesn't have any, but I'm going to show you another plague that happened in Africa. So before I do that, let me read you this. This came out today. South China Morning Post. Coronavirus in your toilet. How a Hong Kong policy change on pipes may have caused this. Public housing tenants were not allowed to modify bathroom pipes until August 2016. Reclassification may have allowed coronavirus to travel 10 stories down in one housing estate. A housing department policy change allowed the tenants to alter their pipe design. This one place is a 35-story building. It's a government building, and it has 840 units. What did they do? Well, you may not be able to see it from back there, but I'll show you. Every toilet, including yours, has a vent pipe. See that vent pipe? That is very, very good. It takes away all the fumes and all the airborne things that are in your. Every one of them have to have it in United States. China used to have it until 2016. Because there were so many problems in these complexes, they were able to cut off the vent pipe. That vent pipe is extremely necessary. That means all the fumes go straight into the room. Those fumes carry the coronavirus. And so this is one of the reasons why it got so widespread. And so by the way, if you're ever to China, it's one housing project after another. They're all government housing projects. It's communist. So they provide the houses for literally millions of people. Wuhan is loaded with them. So this is one of the reasons why it's spread so fast. All right, let me go a little bit further. I told you about locusts. I remember that one. So the locust plague is worse than even I told you last week. 360 billion locusts on the planet and growing. This as a plague of biblical proportions. 360, we only have 8 billion people on the planet. 360 billion locusts. They travel up to 93 miles a day. They can eat their own weight in food every 24 hours. And now they are traveling all over the place. Another article came out yesterday actually, that I want to read to you. 360 billion insects have laid waste to farmlands across Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia. UN officials keep claiming the number could get up to 500 times larger. More breeding cycles are expected. And this is the new article that came out, and this one's pretty shocking. The Horn of Africa, by the way, the Horn of Africa has the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 12th nation responsible for killing Christians in the world, in that order, is battling the worst locust plague to hit the region in 7 decades. In biblical style, the locusts have already devoured and destroyed 175,000 acres of land. Rainfall in the region has been optimized, breeding conditions for the insects resulting in a massive population explosion. A large swarm can eat every bit of green foliage on a farm in a half a day, destroying the livelihood of farmers for an entire year. The Bible talks about famine in the last days. You can hear it in some of the plagues of Revelation. This is going to cause a famine. When the locusts come through and eat everything, it leaves nothing for people and leaves nothing for farmers. They eat every single thing that's there. They destroy it. It becomes a wasteland after they're done. Somalia, the number 3 country in the world for killing Christians, has declared the situation a national emergency. The locusts this year are larger than usual, meaning they're eating more. Meanwhile, Deutsche Welle reports that Pakistan, the number 5 nation in the world for killing Christians, also declared a national emergency due to locusts. India, the number 10 nation in the world for killing Christians, is also experiencing locust swarms. Bible prophecy foretells a future when the earth will be devastated by many different plagues from animals, insects, and microorganisms. We're watching it in China, a microorganism. We're watching Africa, China persecuted Christians. We're watching it sweep across Africa with lots of Boko Haram and Islamists that are killing and beheading Christians. This is a hand of God, whether we know it or not. India and Pakistan, we are seeing God. God is slow to anger, but trust me, when God starts to work, he continues his work. So let's see. Number 3, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 10, and number 12 of the worst Christian killing nations are now experiencing some type of plague. Along with that, let me tell you what NASA and your news did not tell you last week nor this week. Wormwood warning, another asteroid close approach confirmed. In the book of Revelation, chapter 8, we're warned that one day the Earth will experience a devastating encounter with an object from space, most likely an asteroid. The space object is called wormwood because it causes bitterness, poison, and death to its impact with the Earth, causing 1/3 of the waters to become poison. While this weekend's asteroid approach is not going to hit the Earth, we're having one, it's coming at us this weekend. Its close approach reminds us of such verses and the relationship between prophecy and the universe in which God has created. There are literally hundreds of thousands of large asteroids that are out there that fall into the Earth's gravity. We're going to have what they're calling a near miss. Now, you're not going to see it. It's far enough away that you're not going to see it by a telescope or anything like that, but it's going to come between us and the moon. That is, astronomically, that's very close, but I'm going to tell you when that came closer. Asteroid 2002 PZ39 is predicted to travel past our planet at speeds of more than 35,000 miles per hour, and it's making what NASA is calling a close approach. On Saturday, February 15th at around 11:05 a.m. Central Time. NASA has estimated to be about 3,280 feet across, which is enough to destroy an entire continent. In 2018, the White House published a report by the National Science and Technology Council on the dangers posed by so-called near-Earth objects, NEOs. By the way, we only see about 25% of them. Most of them we see after they pass us. According to the report, impactors measuring between 1,312 feet and 5,249 feet in diameter can destroy an entire continent. Such objects would strike the Earth with a minimum energy of over 60 megatons of TNT, which is more powerful than any nuclear device ever tested. Such an asteroid could hit and trigger a chain reaction of earthquakes, tsunamis, and other secondary effects far beyond the emitted impact area. Any fast-moving space object that comes within around 4.65 million miles is considered to be potentially hazardous. So the sun is at 93 million miles. The moon is at 286,000 miles. So anything that comes 4.5 million miles is considered to be dangerous, close. Why? Because it can tumble the wrong way, get sucked into our gravitational pull, and it could be an Earth killer. So think about this. 4.65 is the danger zone, 4.6 million miles away. Last month, the Earth experienced a smaller space rock that slipped past NASA's radar, we didn't see it, and was only discovered less than 12 hours before it flew close by the Earth. Known as asteroid 2020 BH6, the object flew extremely close to our planet's surface, skimming the Earth closer than the moon, traveling at 22,800 miles per hour, and buzzed the Earth from only 37,000 miles away. Now, if they're warning you about something 4.5 million miles away, and this thing came in on only 37,000 miles away, by the way, that's extremely close. That's the moon's 286,000 miles away. So this is a hairbreadth. Had it tumbled the wrong way, and we didn't see it coming in, by the way. Had it tumbled the wrong way, it could have impacted the Earth. And so we understand that that means this asteroid passed at 0.18 times the distance to the moon. It's very, very shallow. The Russians have suddenly decided because of it, now's the time to create an organization that will be tasked with detecting, tracking, and potentially destroying incoming asteroids. One of the hard parts about this is this, as I told you before, we have no way of detecting almost 75% of these. Our solar system is full of potentially dangerous giant rocks, and big enough impact could literally end our civilization. So why now? Well, the Russians can't they just sit back and let the Americans do all the work? Well, I wish somebody would ask Vladimir Putin that. And this sudden move by the Russians comes just 1 year after the U.S. issued a National Near-Earth Object Preparedness Strategy Action Plan. Or maybe both governments know something that they aren't telling the public yet. Let me tell you something. The more I see in the news, the more I realize the Bible is absolutely accurate. It's going to happen. That's in the news for tonight. I'm going to ask the ushers if they come forward. If you have any questions or anything you want to add, you can just put your hand up and we'll talk about it.